Rapid technological change presents organizations with both immense opportunities and significant challenges. But how can leaders understand and implement these technologies without leaving people behind? How can they get better at learning to keep pace with these changes and help their people to do the same? And how can they manage the risks involved? To help answer these questions, I'm joined by Impact's own Wendy Lee. Wendy, how are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here, Dan. It's fun to be on this end of it instead of listening as a avid listener of your podcast.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear. Thank you. And welcome. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for giving us time out of your day to talk about things technological change based. Before we get into that, let's give our audience the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't you tell us about yourself in 60 seconds?
Okay, so my name is Wendy Lee, and I've been at Impact for quite a few years. I'm coming up to year 19, and I have sort of grown up in this business. So I've done multiple roles in the business, and currently my role is as the global lead for client service and operations. And in that role, I work on the client side, helping our clients with their solutions, but I also oversee our digital team, which is how I have current interest in the topic for today. And as a individual, I live in the US currently, and I am outside of New York City, about an hour in the suburbs. And I've got two kids, and we are currently enjoying lots of outdoor activities in the snow because it's winter.
Yeah, well, yes, a snow day, I believe,
Yeah.
where you've not been able to get out of the house, so, which is very exciting as far as I'm concerned, and a bit jealous. Well, thank you for that introduction. And so let's get talking about today's topic, which is all about change, but in the sort of looking at technology specifically. And of course, I mean, unless you live under a rock, you'll know that there's been sort of exponential levels of technological change in recent years and months. So maybe we could get the sort of top level overview from you first. So what tell us a bit about the context of technological change that we're talking about today.
I mean, I think you've said it really clearly about it feeling exponential.
Mm,
So we know that technology change is something that's been happening for a very long time. And what is creating, I think, a lot of noise now is the rapid pace of how that's changing. So when you think about technology changes today, like people will say that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And
mm,
it's where we're transitioning from this information age, which was that dot-com era, like really about data, into what is the intersection of multiple things. So the intersection of physical world, of the digital world, and of biological worlds. So it's bringing us into a new revolution that opens so many possibilities, but that is going at a pace where new things are happening continuously. So that, I think, is the biggest thing, is the pace and the scale of the change and how it overlaps so many different things, and not just, computers per se,
mm.
but loads of things.
And what from and with that change comes challenges. What challenges have you seen or are aware of that presents for organizations and for leaders?
I mean, I think there are challenges on two ends. I think there's a positive challenge around opportunity because with these
Mm-hmm.
technological changes, you get so many possibilities, almost so many that people don't know what to do, the overwhelm of what these new technologies might enable them as individuals or as organizations to do. And then on the flip side, from a negative standpoint, I think that there are challenges around risk management because these
Mm-hmm.
technologies are very new, they are very big, they are hard to understand for most users. So there's a risk element and risk management. And then there's a people challenge around, I think, fear and fear of
Mm-hmm.
change, fear of somehow the technology taking over, and fear of becoming obsolete. And so I think that there's kind of challenges in multiple directions currently.
And do you think that's been consistent over the years when yeah, I mean, technological change, as you mentioned, has been happening for significant amounts of time, in whatever shape that took. I mean, whether it's been moving from horses to cars or from, the sort of the introduction of computers and the internet and moving into that and change that way. Do you think the sort of the core, what, not approach, but do you think like the fundamentals of facing new technologies are the same as they've always have been, or do you think now that we're living in a world of things like AI, do you think it's different than what it ever was, or do you think that kind of human reaction to technology and new technology is the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are still people. And
Mm,
so the reactions that we're having are, I think, not necessarily different than from previous new technologies that have been introduced. But what I think is different is the scale of it seems more like an affront potentially to your humanity, right? Because
mm,
AI has almost like a human-like quality, and
mm,
that new technologies, like a car versus a horse, is not that affronting to us as like humans. But when you think about the possibility of AI somehow either replacing me as a human
mm,
or taking my job or somehow controlling, in the doomsday scenario that the AI suddenly controls humans. I think that there's that element of it that is different. But the core emotional reaction is just part of being human.
mm. It's interesting, isn't it? Because yes, there's, I think at the moment, even people that are technologically minded with AI, there are certain question marks that and questions that are still yet to be answered and yet to be, and I think there's a lot around. Um, but I think it'd be interesting to kind of maybe delve a little bit deeper into how organizations and their people can, um, I suppose, improve their ability to navigate through these changes if they need improving, or things to look out for. So maybe then let's look at the role of a leader in this. So how would you say can leaders improve their ability to navigate and lead through this technological change?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is staying informed. And so I think
Mm,
it's easy when things are moving rapidly, when things seem so complex to say, I'm just going to wait until it's done and figure it out from there. I think it's
mm,
very important for leaders today to stay informed of what's happening, not all the technological details, but the implications of what is going on and into your kind of role. So let me scan for things that are relevant. I might not need to be a deep expert now, but I need to be aware of it ahead of my people. So it's not something that comes to me because someone over here is suddenly concerned about it and I'm not aware at all. So I'm on my back foot. And as a
mm,
leader, the expectation that people have, particularly in times of a lot of change, is that your leader knows as much, or at least will help you steer to make sense of what you're seeing. So to
mm,
be informed is, I think, a really important thing.
mm. There's some interesting, as we talked about earlier, there's some interesting kind of human attributes and behaviors that I think are probably quite key here. Things like empathy and curiosity that often, especially going around that fear piece, because if you've got people that you're working around that are fearful of technological change, there's got, from a leader's point of view, there's got to be that sort of human soft skill to be able to work and develop those people that are maybe in fear. Would you agree, or is there
Yeah,
other
I would.
things to?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Dan. Yeah,
No, you're
I would
good.
absolutely agree with that. And I think one of the things is sometimes what you get from your people as an initial reaction isn't always full picture, right? And so
Mm,
you're kind of talking about the empathy, the curiosity. As a leader, it's about understanding like what is the emotion underneath this reaction or behavior that I'm experiencing?
mm,
Because we might label it as someone, being dismissive, or we might label it as someone being a technological dinosaur, but really it's about something more human, a fear, right? A fear of being obsolete. And one of
mm,
the things that, I speak a lot about with some of our clients is about how AI and the intersection with human dignity is a really important thing. So
mm,
AI might take away my agency as a person. And then what does that mean for me as a valuable contributor to
mm,
this organization when
mm,
the AI bot can do my job. And I think understanding that and being empathetic with your people around it is critical to helping them navigate through the change. And because if you don't, that emotion will override their ability to do anything else.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm wondering if you've got any real world examples that you could share. I'm kind of thinking if you've got, I mean, with maybe without mentioning names, but clients that you've worked with that or can think of that have gone through technological change. Is there anything that you can share with us today?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, I'll give you an example. Like we have a client called Farmlands in New Zealand who,
Mm,
they're a farmers cooperative, which is an unusual organization to think about in terms of digital transformation. But in the last 5 years, they have undergone the largest digital transformation in the Southern Hemisphere. And
wow.
one of the things that they recognized is to take something that to like the general user seems like a very non-technological thing, and see the value of moving into the digital space and then implementing that as a strategy has been a really, I think, important journey for them as an organization, but it was very people centric. So while they had tasks and technical things that they were doing, they understood the need to kind of bring the leaders along, because by bringing the leaders along, it's how they were bringing the rest of the organization along. So
Mm,
equipping the leaders with the skills that they needed to be able to manage their people well through the digital transformation. And I don't think that that's significantly different than any organization that's gone through a digital transformation. The tech is only a piece of it. If you
mm,
don't do the people side of it well, the tech falls down. I mean, even today, I was talking to some internal impact people,
mm,
and we have our own tech. And there's some people who are early adopters, and there's some people who years later they still don't use the thing, even though it's there. We've invested in it, and it's about then bringing those people along and not just saying, "Here's a new piece of tech, ta-da, use it."
yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. I mean, if it worked
No.
like that, it'd be awesome. And there's also probably a lot of people who'd be out of a job if it just worked that magically well. And because
Yeah.
change management is super important.
Mm. And a lot of it, as you've mentioned, isn't about the tech; it's about the people. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really key point there that you've kind of hit on. So maybe as a sort of a way to conclude, are there any top tips that you can give? So, say for example, maybe let's put a scenario in place. So, um, say someone's listening to this and go, right, okay, yeah, this sounds like us. We need to start on a journey of technological change with our people. What would be, if you've got one, a sort of a top tip of how to start that process?
I think it's about being open and inclusive. So it's not a top down approach, but if something is coming, I think it's important to prime people by letting them explore a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
letting them be privy to some of the conversations about what's going on, so that when the final change is decided what it will be, it's not completely new and a surprise to people, because you'll get more of a knee jerk reaction from that as opposed to helping bring people along in the journey so that when it happens, it feels familiar already.
Mm. I think what's interesting about that is that that approach can be adopted into other areas, not just technological change. I think there's a real sort of human approach that you've talked about there, where it's that yeah can be, and if that starts to be the norm within an organization, then there's going to be loads of positive knock-on effects, I would say, from that. Wendy, that's been brilliant. And one thing I almost forgot to mention is that the farmlands story that you told, I've just remembered we do have a video on that, which we'll put in the link in the description of this episode. So yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I'm going to finish our recording today with a final question that we ask all of our guests, so you're not escaping it. It's probably a question you've either been asked or have asked before in your career with Impact, which is, if you were to sort of start your career again, or start from scratch, and you knowing what you know now, what would your advice to your younger self be?
I think it's sort of related to what we've been talking about, which is to be less afraid to take risks.
Mm. Being risk averse is one we've heard a couple of times, and it is a good one, isn't it? Would you say then that you live by that advice now?
I think I do. I think I'm lucky because we are in an organization that likes adventure. And because we've got adventure as part of our like culture, then there's a risk element in adventure that makes it easier to do. But I
Mm,
think, before I joined Impact, there are definitely decisions that I made based on my risk tolerance and what, you know, I'm getting to an age where I'm getting nostalgic for when I was young and starting to think about, what is it that I could have done? Or, imagine if I had made this decision.
mhm.
And, I think if I were to do it over again, that's the advice I would give myself.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, it's a great piece of advice, and I'm sure people will be able to take stuff from that, as will I. Wendy, it's been brilliant. Thank you ever so much for joining me today, and hopefully our audience today have learned some things from our conversation. So that just leaves me to say, if you'd like to find out any more about Impact and the work we do, or you'd like to watch the case study video that we talked about from Farmlands, or you'd like to connect with either myself or Wendy on LinkedIn, then you'll find all of the links that you need in the description of where you found today's episode. So that just remains me to thank Wendy one more time for joining me today. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
And until the next time, take care.